And so you can control your ball flight by tuning the lift and drag of a golf ball. And that's what these ball manufacturers are doing. So Mars, okay, if we can package that kind of tour fitting philosophy into a software that everyone can use, that'd be amazing value, not only to general consumers, but also to our fitters. I think the pain point, having now seen over 100 balls we've tested, is it'd be really sad if we work really hard from a fitting perspective to get someone to the best possible G440 driver and gain them a couple miles an hour ball speed, gain 5-10 yards of distance, and then to go pick a random ball up off the shelf and they lose 15 yards because they're playing the wrong ball. And so it was like this would be a great service to have to our fitters and also to consumers to make sure they get the most out of their ping equipment. Even though we don't have a skin in the game on the ball perspective, we can help people get into the best ball possible.
Jumping right into it with Chris Broadie, famous Chris Broadie from Ping Golf. I looking on the internet, you've got a couple different titles, and I guess the one that stuck out the most was head of fitting science for Ping. Is that the most accurate as far as what you're doing?
Yeah, I started out as I guess it was a research intern, and then was working in our analysis and testing department. I think that was it was roughly a data scientist, and then became the head of fitting science under Marty, who had on previously. Now I'm officially fitting science manager, but I think I've argued that head of fitting science sounds pretty good too. So both those are good by me.
What was the gravitation to golf and Ping in particular? Was it that you're obviously everyone knows who your dad is? Every shot counts. The author of that book and his professorship. But was there a pull through golf through him and the family, or did you gravitate to it, or how did that come about? Just kind of take us through that step.
Yeah, I definitely was, played a lot of golf growing up. I think middle school, I remember reading something I wrote in middle school. It was like my favorite sport at the time, and it kind of continued that way going forward. Played on the high school golf team and was a math major at Cornell. So I always kind of had those two interests. And obviously Dad was kind of getting to talk with PGA Tour, get strokes gained, introduced to golf. So seeing that more advanced analytics side of things. And it definitely was probably top of my list, was trying to figure out how I could do both golf and math at the same time. I think Paul Wood, who's been on the show, had the introduction to my dad. They've been going to these World Scientific Congress of Golf events that Ping now is pretty heavily involved with. And I think kind of Andrew Rice, coach camp circuit. I think pretty sure my dad's been to that. And I know Paul, Marty, Eric, myself have all been to that. So I think there are definitely some reasons to go look at Ping specifically. And it worked out amazingly where Ping is really focused on the engineering side of things. You could go really go deep into math, physics models, and it's been super fun to kind of dive into very deep engineering topics and kind of explore a lot of really fun projects.
It is interesting that some of the old time engineering guys that I know that were exceptional club designers, fitters, etc. Like it's kind of like, with the computer graphics and the AI and everything, I guess sitting down and grinding on an old wheel is kind of a old art form that's dying out. But some of these guys were telling me this was probably around, I'm going to ballpark, I could get this a little bit off, but everyone will understand the point once they hear it. Right around, I think 2010, 11, 12, they were saying, hey, if you need a new hybrid, check out Ping. You need a new driver, check out Ping. You need a new this, check out Ping. And so when I had Eric and Paul on the show and I was going over when they started at Ping, I'm like, this is aligning pretty damn spot on and then talking to them, it makes sense. And then, I don't know when Marty started. I don't think I asked him when he was on, and obviously you're a little younger than everybody else, but that's why I enjoy talking to all you guys. It's like the culture at Ping not only revolves around the engineering and how do you make great products that perform well, but how do you continue to set the next bar And it was one of the questions I had. I don't remember if it was Eric or Paul. I said, how do you guys as scientists and engineers maintain or not lose the creativity portion of what you do? Because it has to be aesthetically appealing. And the answer was so simple, but so spot on. It's like, well, we schedule creative meetings. It's like, it doesn't get any simpler than that, but yet obviously highly effective for what you guys are doing. And you being a big part of that since you got there and we're going to get into a number of the things that you're heavily involved in. But I thought that was very interesting that the old timers were telling me, hey, check out Ping around this time this started. And here's this whole new, well, not new anymore. I mean, it's 15, 20 years ago, wave of you guys that are doing some really great things. It's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I think I've been able to see some of those trends. I feel like for me, what instantly clicked was some of our driver philosophy, where we've kind of always been like, hey, the best solution is let's line up our CG with their impact, get as high ball speed as possible through that, and let's get as high and wide as we possibly can. And that's move the CG low and back. And we've been pretty consistent with that for last 15 plus, probably forever. And that's helped us people know, okay, Ping's will come out with a really solid driver every year. Where I've seen some other companies have kind of been jumping around with their philosophy. Sometimes it's low and forward, sometimes it's chasing some other feature. I think knowing that we're grounded in those engineering principles helps us stay really consistently high performing from year to year. And it's been nice to be kind of part of the tail end of that trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, the other thing I think is related is I think we've seen the importance of maybe some of the softer design characteristics. Like while we were chasing kind of low and back CG, I think our drivers were known as not being very good sounding. Like if I still hear the 410, 425, there's a little bit of cowbell, like that's painful to listen to. And we've made a conscious effort to, hey, like we've done really well in optimizing some of these fundamental physics side of things. How can we put some of that same engineering focus into making a club sound good, making it look good? And so the amount of time that like Eric's team has put into modeling sound, understanding different frequencies, where can you put different small structures that will change the sound by quite a bit, has been like, there's a reason again why our drivers in the past 4 generations have started to sound a lot better, because we put that focus into, okay, we've tackled some of the super low hanging fruit to get performance really good. How do we kind of dial into the maybe less pure engineering, but still really important to a golfer? How is it look and sound?
Yeah, because golfers are very finicky about things like that. Like if you had a driver that was designed absolutely perfect for somebody that optimized launch, optimized spin, ball speed, et cetera, but it made a noise that they were uncomfortable with, and then you made a driver that really didn't match them at all, but you could muffle the sound, so it was whatever the noise and impact was that they were like, that was pleasing to their ears in a certain way. They would always pick the one that sounded better. And then I would have to guess, now I haven't done fitting exclusively in almost 20 years, but I would have to guess that their association with sound is what they're going to say is feel. They said, that really feels soft on a muffled driver, and boy, that really feels tinny, or that feels rough, or fill in the adjective on the blank. But it's strange that golfers, and I would have to imagine you see it across the board from tour pros to average Joes that come out and go through your fitting process, that it's similar. It's like it's a human characteristic. It's not just particular to a certain level of golfer.
Yeah, I think we did it with like players irons versus game improvement irons, but I think it could be really obvious if we did it with like putting, to the firm versus soft ball, firm versus soft insert, and you put put headphones on and hit the putt, they're not gonna be able to tell the difference in sound if there's no like visual cues. But you take the headphones off, they hear the sound, they associate with feel. So those things I think we've proven are very, very highly correlated.
Do you ever, when you're sitting there at work with the talent, I'll call it, that you guys are all in the same building or in the same room or meeting, sitting around a table talking about the next greatest thing that's coming, do you ever just pinch yourself and say, I kind of hit the lottery and on getting the job that you have and just enjoying it?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's very easy to, well, maybe easier day to day to forget it, but it doesn't take a whole lot of zooming out to be like, you're pretty fortunate to people who want to spend time with all these great minds, and you're able to do it day in, day out. But it's also a fun environment to like push yourself. I think I was talking to a couple of the guys. Like we have a golf science meeting that Eric runs, and all these people have done some podcasts or presenting in front of people, and they're like, I still get nervous talking to the golf science meeting because you have these 10, 15 minds that are all kind of grilling your idea, and they're going to say if it makes sense or doesn't, and make sure that you know the fundamentals of what you're talking about. And so that's kind of cool to be able to pressure test each other's ideas and kind of keep on pushing towards better and better product.
I'd have to imagine I watch it. It took me a while to get to it, but about a couple months ago, I watched that movie Oppenheimer. I'd have to imagine that some of y'all's meetings look like the meeting rooms in Oppenheimer. You get all these brainiacs sitting around just figure out the way to make golfers hit it longer, hit it straighter, hit it better, hit it this or hit it that. And the glide wedges where you can put the water on it and the spin stays relatively similar to what when it's dry. I mean, that's just as a consumer and somebody who's in the business and been in for a long time now, I just look at that and I just, how the hell these guys come up with this stuff? And girls, I don't want to leave girls out. I'm sure they're there. I'm just general conversation, but it's just, it's amazing that these things can be done. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about more than one of them today.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. I've definitely been pretty heavily involved with some of our friction analysis with kind of the wedges portion of things, but also kind of the ball testing. We have our kind of wet wedge fly prevention score. And then we've done a ton of stuff with impact modeling and ball flight physics, and tons of areas of research that have opened up through our new focal analysis lab where you can see a golf club coming in at 720 frames per second, and that has unlocked a whole another world of analysis. But then I'm also in these meetings sometimes where they're going deep on a topic that I'm not super aware of, like some deep material science. I'm like, I'm struggling to keep up. But this is cool that everyone knows this that well.
Do you have to, as part of the fitting process, and I remember Marty said that the best time out there to test golf balls is in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, because I guess the winds really calm down, the temperature, the humidity, everything is just like as close to ideal as you can get it. Do they bring you in for that, or say, hey, we're going to be here through the night, you're going to be here through the night, or how does that work with the hierarchy, social status at Ping?
I luckily haven't had to do that too much recently. I know it's kind of an intern project that you always had to, whenever we're doing grass wedge testing, you'd have to take blades of grass and apply it to tape so you could apply it to where pinion was hitting. And that's kind of always your intern project, just make sure you'd always applied grass to make sure the pinion could hit off of that. So I've definitely have done my fair share of intern type dirty work, but we still try to, I mean, wind is probably the most important thing when we're doing our ball testing, getting it as close to dome-like as possible, which is hard. Like we'll wait like weeks on end to get a very, very calm day where the wind's forecast to be under 2 miles an hour. And that often means trying to find odd hours of the night to fit in ball testing.
That's got to suck if you the forecast is for, you think you're going to have it. You waited a couple of weeks and then you wait up all night and you're out there middle of the night and all of a sudden the weather's not cooperating. Like, God, it's awful. But I guess there could be worse things, in jobs.
But that's something about ball testing. I think, other companies that are kind of constrained to, hey, we're going to be doing our ball testing that set day we have. It's like, that's got to be so much harder that you're battling through 8-mile-per-hour winds that kind of fluctuate this way and that way. So that's one of the reasons why we're super confident in our ball limit databases, because they put such stringent requirements on how we collect that data.
Take us through a typical day for you at Ping.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of, I didn't expect it, but kind of going from a kind of individual contributor to manager role means the typical data is shifted quite a bit. It used to be pretty much like head down focus for nearly 8 hours on trying to make a lot of progress on a single project. And now it's like scattered in a good way, probably, where we've got 8 to 15 different projects we're trying to make progress on, and you kind of try to help out and make sure everyone on your team has what they need to get their work done. So I'd say it's being able to kind of shift your focus and lock in for 30 minutes on whatever we're doing from a ball fitting perspective or new fitting tool. We're kind of constantly coming out with new features to add to Ping Copilot, which is our main one-stop shop for all our fitting tools for accounts. So we just, like today, we just released I-240 and IDI updates, which went on live on Copilot, went live on our WebFit site. And so it's like today was checking to make sure all those updates look good, and then pivoting to working on a Balnamic project this afternoon. So it's a pretty nice mix of like, I don't know, 5 to 10 things that are top of mind and trying to make progress where you can.
Is the Ping brand or everything that you guys are doing, is it in some way, shape, or form, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, is it following kind of the Apple model where you can have everything within a certain system, that it doesn't have to go outside the system to bring something in? It seems like you guys keep developing these programs that are really, really doing great things, and then you don't have to go outside to other companies to get them to come in and provide you with whatever it is you're trying to do. Is that something that, am I off base with that, or is that somewhere online? And was that, if so, was that a conscious effort to do so, or did it just kind of evolve into that?
I would say a good amount of it has kind of naturally evolved. It's like one of the first projects I worked on was in the fitting science group, was making our WebFit kind of full bag tool. And that was pretty well received. It was a really nice way to get a full bag recommendation. And we then kind of pivoted into, okay, how can we help golfers with WebFit wedge fitting, putter fitting, junior fitting? And we kept on making different tools, and like they're really well received from a customer perspective. And then separately working on engineering tools. So I was kind of working with our design department on how do we optimize launch and spin, and how do we optimize our driver and fairway designs. And that progressed into, okay, we have some guidelines on what people should target for launch and spin for different ball speeds, angle attacks. That turned into a chart. And like, oh, it'd be nice if we had a widget that people could use. We have this internally. How do we make this easily accessible online? And so I think a lot of that's been a natural graduation of different projects we've worked on. How to make it accessible from first our engineers to use it and then fitters to use it. And so it's kind of natural, okay, how can we put all these tools together? But I don't think Marty and I really expected that our group would become a bit of a software shop. Like we were developing websites primarily now to make fitters' lives easier, to make consumers' lives easier. We have probably 3 software engineers that are working in our group. So it's pretty unexpected, but I think been very valuable for fitters to have a single place to go to.
Yeah, like the first one that I was aware of, I think it was around, you guys launched it a little prior to him coming on. When Marty came on, was the Balnamic fitting. And I check in on that every once in a while. I don't play enough now to do it every 6 months, or I think Marty said do it at least every year because the ball's changed so much. From the initial stages of when you guys launched that site, or first it's a ball fitting site, and I'll let you speak to that. So if people don't know that, they can go to that, and I think it's still $40. They can put in what they want their ball performance to be, and it will give recommendations. But how has that system evolved over the couple of years that it's been around?
Yeah, I think for me, it kind of started evolving before that. I think Paul, there's probably 2 separate like genesis of Balnamic in my mind. One is when Paul Wood came to Ping. He had his PhD in solar flares, so he was like modeling how, I don't even know, I guess balls of energy fly in the sun, and so that translated pretty well to modeling how golf balls fly through the air. And so he worked on one of his first projects was to come up with our ball flight model, and allowed us to make an end flight fitting software. And a lot of fitters love that as a really easy way to gap your clubs and also convert between range balls and premium balls. So he was always interested in ball flight, physics side of things. When I got to Ping, one of the first projects I worked on was how do we improve our ball flight model. We had a couple engineers say, hey, like, the model is really good for a lot of different areas, but it's not capturing our throughway trajectories very well. And I kind of found that low flight ball flights, we weren't modeling correctly. How do we improve that? And so I kind of got the physics background to how to model ball flights correctly. And Marty came in with his playing experience, and he told a story. He was on your podcast of trying to get fit into the G400 Max driver, and the ball was floating on him, his 2000 spin. He knew from our optimal launch and spin chart, they should be at 25, 2400 spin. And our tour rep, Kenton, gave him the left dot, which took his ball flight down by 15 feet. And he's like, how'd that happen? That's amazing. Looked over TrackMan, and the spinner is still at 2800. And Ken's like, Marty's like, how's it possible? I saw that thing flying 10, 15 feet lower, and it's still saying 2800 spin. He's like, that's the aerodynamic properties of that golf ball. It has the same spin rate, but it flies lower. And so that was kind of an aha moment that even these highly premium balls do not have the same aerodynamic properties. And so you can control your ball flight by tuning the lift and drag of a golf ball, and that's what these ball manufacturers are doing. And so Mars, okay, if we can package that kind of tour fitting philosophy into a software that everyone can use, that'd be amazing value, not only to general consumers, but also to our fitters. I think the pain point, having now seen over 100 balls we've tested, is it'd be really sad if we work really hard from the fitting perspective to get someone to the best possible G440 driver and gain them a couple miles an hour ball speed, gain 5-10 yards of distance, and then to go pick a random ball up off the shelf and they lose 15 yards because they're playing the wrong ball. And so it was like this would be a great service to have to our fitters and also to consumers, to make sure we can get the most out of their paint equipment. Even though we don't have a skin in the game on the ball perspective, we can help people get into the best ball possible. And then I wasn't even sure how, because I now kind of got into the background of how the ball flies, how do you tune these aerodynamic lift and drag properties. I was like, I don't know if it's actually possible to simulate a driver ball flight for everyone who goes through this tool. How do we do that? How do we simulate it 7-iron properly? And I think one of our interns like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if we could just kind of have a specific ball flight for each ball that we test. So it took a little bit of math, but we were able to come up with an exact aerodynamic properties for each golf ball that we tested, because we tested different speeds in different launch conditions. And so kind of packaged it all together into ball fitting. It's been really nice to now have that going. I think it's probably going around like 5 or 6 years at this point, and fun to kind of see.
But when you do the calculations, when you do the mathematical and the scientific side of it, do you have to reach out to the ball manufacturers to get the dimple patterning and the width of the dimple, the side, the depth of the crater, all the different properties of the ball, so that you can input that into your calculations to make these calculations?
Yeah, there's a thought that we could back out the aerodynamics based off of like a 3D scan of the ball, figure out dimple depth and width and all these different factors. But the reason why we require such tight wind tolerances on our testing is because we actually just completely derive it based on what we see in our testing. And so we have our ball flight model that's tuned very well. It's what we use at our ping range for most part, Purple and X. And we can then say, okay, when that shot is usually hit at 170 ball speed, 12 launch, 2500 spin, we expect it to carry 295 yards and 110 foot peak height. And then we have the same, a lot of drivers actually have very similar launch conditions. So like they're launching on a spinner will stay pretty similar off of 10 different premium golf balls. They might have a little bit of ball speed differences with compression, but it's usually similar launch and spin, tiny differences in ball speed. And then, but if you see on Pingman that one ball flew 10 feet lower and 5 yards further, it's pretty easy to back out that, oh, the lift on that golf ball had to be lower. The drag on that ball had to be lower. That's why it flew lower and further. So we're directly backing out from what we observe in the Pingman testing. If the ball flies lower, it probably has lower lift. If it flies higher, it probably has higher lift. We can get pretty precise with exact measurements for how much the coefficient of lift and drag is changing.
With the work you guys have done and the expertise you've developed in balls in particular, as well as the background of the company and what you do and everybody else there, when the ruling bodies were doing their study on golf balls, it's kind of died down the discussion on this, because it's they made their announcement, now everyone's kind of waiting for it to be invoked. But did they reach out to you guys at all to get your input on any of what you were seeing? And obviously they had to know that you guys were doing this work, and it's like not like everybody's doing it. You guys are one of the only ones that I know or are the only ones that I know that have done something like that. So I would have to imagine that if that they would reach out to you just because of what company you're with, who you guys are, the work that you're doing, etc. Was there ever anyone that contacted you or Marty or anybody at Ping and asked questions?
I know that we had an official statement as a company, but I don't think that we were consulted ever. But it is definitely going to be. We've had our own like theories on what do we think is manufacturers are going to change to hit these new conformance rules. Basically, you have to cut off 25, 30 yards of distance on a
Mm-hmm.
high speed drive. It's like how do we think golf ball manufacturers are going to go about this? And we have our own thoughts on how to do it. But yeah, it'll very much change basically the two avenues that we think will probably be are either changing someone's ball speed or changing the lift and drag. And so probably some combination of the two would make sense. But it'll be very interesting. Both have disproportionate effects on faster speed players. So the guys who are 180 plus ball speed are going to see that full 30-yard plus loss in distance, and the guys who are more recreational with 120 mile per hour ball speed might see 10 yards or less.
Mm.
But it changes kind of our whole. We're actually actively working on like what do we think our loft should be on our iron sets? How do we think we should change our lofts on metal woods? Trying to prep for that work because it's coming up kind of pretty soon in our engineering timelines.
In your opinion, do you see any relevance? And I don't want to get if you think you might get in trouble by answering this, by all means, you can say no comment. But do you think what they're doing? If someone gave you the keys of the kingdom and said, "Chris, we're going to let you be the ruling body in golf," I have seen or can see somewhat of arguments from both sides. Like with what they're able to do with ball technology is, as you said, just the flight can go. It can have the same launch characteristics and everything, but the peak height is lower and the trajectory is lower. Or they can do this, but they can dial in balls to a certain individual, which is a good thing, obviously, if you're playing. But it's I can see the other side of the argument it seems to be that they're making some classic courses like a Marion obsolete. Where a lot of these old courses, these classic courses, and maybe this is just a lot of people say, well, that's just the old courses where we can move on to newer courses. But yeah, but golf's a traditional game. It's built around tradition. You don't want to just toss somebody to the side that has had such an impact on the history of the game. Because a lot of these courses in these older cities or bigger older cities are landlocked. They can't be buying up land. No one has, not as many people have the money that Augusta National does, where they can just keep buying, and they're getting to a point, I think, that they're not going to be able to stretch some holes out much longer. So there are valid points on both sides, but as somebody who deals in the ball space and tests and probably knows as much about them as the people that are making them, and somebody who's in the game, do you tend to fall one way or the other on what you think? Like I said, if somebody gave you the keys of the kingdom, would you have a preference on what was done?
Yeah, I think I'm slightly in favor of it. I think the demands for the amount of the length of courses, it seems to only be going up, and I think we're only seeing faster and faster guys. Even the funny thing for us is in our ping player testing database, we can see how fast people's driver ball speed are over the years. And I know when I got to ping, and that was only 8 years ago, I was like, I could get over 170 mile an hour ball speed, and that was like, oh wow, you got some speed.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got guys who are over 180 mile an hour ball speed, and they're reaching 185, and it's like now that maybe I'm 175 ball speed, and it's like people barely batting the eye. Oh, that's like average for our fast player test pool. And so I think it's only going to get faster. You got college guys who seem to be pretty easily hitting 185, 190 ball speed, and so at that speed, it's like the physics are the ball's going to carry 330 in the air, and it's going to roll it to 350. If they try to make a course firm and fast, the ball's going to 370, and you need a 550-yard par four to make it a bit of a challenge. And so from that perspective, it's like if you want courses to not just get 7,500, 8,000 yards long, I think rolling the ball back does make sense.
I was looking at, I've got a book here on the shelf. Here it is, actually, right here, sitting next to me. The Story of Augusta National Golf Club. It goes back to the original. I found this in a resale shop in Charlotte when I was playing in a mini tour event there one year. But I was looking at when there was a lot of noise about Oakmont and was it the 6 hole being 290, 305 or 310 yards. There was a lot of noise about that it's too long, it's too this, it's too that. And I was looking at that book, and I think it was number 4 at Augusta, the par 3. The original length was 220-ish yards, right around there, 220, 230. And if you do a comparison of the golf ball from the 30s till today and how far things go and how high they go and everything else, it's like, well, that's kind of an apples to apples comparison there. And not that I've was around to hear anybody complain back then, but you don't really read about anything or hear stories about people complaining about how hard number 4 was at Augusta. But here they are with the modern technology and the modern everything else, manicuring it where you can roll it up. It's not obviously Oakmont has the famous greens, but number 4 at Augusta, for anybody that's ever been there, you've seen it on TV, he's got this rolling, front to back or kidney shaped green around the bunker. And I just find it interesting that you have a hole like that played that long in those days, and then you have a hole like this, and not everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but you have a lot of noise about, oh, this is too hard, it's too long, it's too this, it's too that. When, as you said, some of these players are hitting out there almost all of them are 300 plus, some of them are 350, and if you're not, you're going to be struggling to keep your card.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to approach it. Like, it is pretty cool that Brian Campbell has won twice on tour, and he's barely cracking 160 ball speed. Yes. So, like, it is. I don't think golf is broken. I think it's still very entertaining. You can have guys who are slow ball speeds competing with the guys who are fast ball speed. That playoff between the mess of his last name at Pot Geider and Campbell, forget like what event that was, but it was the fastest versus slowest guy on tour.
Yeah, you got the fastest guy and the slowest guy, and they win back-to-back weeks.
Like, that's amazing. That golf can still support that disparity. You can still have Brian Longer making cuts at the Masters when he's over 60 years old. So golf is definitely not broken. I also don't think it's a problem that people are shooting 20 under at challenging courses. Like, that's just very impressive golf. I think Scotty Scheffler was talking about the Travelers, and the winning score had been around 20 under a lot of the previous events. And it's like, well, we're really good. And if you put a regular golfer on this course, they're still going to struggle. This course is still a very demanding track. And so that's the tough part too, is that golf's not easy. Like, you don't really want to make it harder for the recreational person who's trying to get into the game. And so that's where there's probably a whole separate discussion of what should be the right thing to do on the amateur side of things. You kind of want to make golf as easy, as inviting as possible. So yeah, it's always going to be a complicated one.
What do you see with the ladies tour? Do they have, because no one's complaining that they're hitting it too long. So let's, if we could speak to something that, not that anyone is closer to them as far as talent level, because they're eons above your scratch golfer +2. But what do you see from the women's front? Because as I was watching the last major they had, I don't remember which announcer it was Laura Barr or somebody was on there saying how if you did the calculations and compared the length of the golf course they were playing to the length of the men's are actually playing average 300 to 400 yards shorter than they should, or the ladies were playing 300 to 400 yards longer. So are the ladies hitting it longer as well, or does that seem to be a guy thing, or on the men's tour where they're developing the skill of extra speed?
Yeah, I'm not sure the trends as clearly on the LPGA tour, but I know that the areas they're going to care about are different when we're designing clubs for the female LPGA tour. Like when we're thinking about hybrid development, the people that we consult the most are the LPGA tour players. That's a very common club for them: 4 hybrid, 5 hybrid, kind of bridging the gap to their fairway woods. Another thing that we've looked at a lot is kind of interesting anecdote on our end is that I worked pretty closely with our now design engineering manager, Travis Millman, who came up with the G430 fairway woods, and he worked on a max head and LST head, and he was trying to figure out the trade-off between CG and MOI. And some of the research that I looked at said that if he could lower the CG on the LST head, he would get more performance. He would carry the ball 5 yards further, and you wouldn't see much of a sacrifice and offline if you made the bulger roll as optimal as you could. Um, and we tested it out. It performed really well in our player testing. LST looked like a great option for players who kind of wanted that maximum distance out of their 3-wood. And we rolled it out to the PGA Tour, and it hasn't really been adopted very much. The Max is our dominant model on the PGA Tour, but then on the LPGA Tour, people are using LST fairwood far more often. And our current kind of hypothesis is that, like, the LPGA Tour players prefer the extra height that you get from that lower CG on that LST. And so their priorities on a golf course are different. Like they maybe struggle to hold some of the greens. I think at the most recent PGA Frisco, I think that was the PGA Championship.
That's where it was. Yeah.
They were struggling to hold a lot of these greens. It's like stopping power, height, super important in the women's game. Getting the LST that might get you an extra 10 feet of peak height is super valuable. But the tour guys, PGA Tour guys, don't struggle with speed, getting the hike and the ball up in the air. And so they prefer that forgiveness, maybe a little bit lower, spinnier flight of the Max. And so I think it kind of tells a different story of like what is the most important for those different golfers. I think like wind, we've done a lot of work on wind point and studying the effects of wind on ball flight, and we're kind of hoping to make that a new product that we roll out for Balldynamic. But we've given it to a lot of our tour players. Marty's used a lot in his own competitions. Like, what does wind do to ball flight? And I think we actually had a coach camp presentation on the effects of wind for PGA versus LPGA Tour golfers. And it's like 2 to 1. Like a 10 mile per hour headwind for a tour player on a 7-iron is going to hurt your distance by 20 yards, and it's only 10 yards for an LPGA Tour golfer. So the priority of what they're focusing on is much less wind dependent and way more getting peak height and getting stopping power. And the tour guys are like, how do we get as much control as possible? How do we play in the wind? How do we get a ball flight that we can predict? So yeah, it was a bit of a tangent of an answer, but it's a fun for us on the engineering side trying to solve these different problems for different skills and different speeds.
You know, Bubba Kruger from Titleist, he's a Titleist tour rep now. Back when I knew him, when he was not a big celebrity in the golf world, when he was still going up and down the East Coast doing fittings, I messaged him. So going back around the Masters, because I think Justin Rose had gone to the Pro V X, Bryson had gone to the Pro V X, and Rory had just switched from the X to the TP5. So the more spinning of the two. And now if you look at the Titleist, the X is supposedly the higher launching, but I believe it still has a little bit more spin. Player dependent. I think they brought them so close together. But I asked him, I said, what's going on with some of the players switching from lower spin balls to higher spin balls and playing better? You know, obviously Bryson he didn't win, but he was up there, Masters, PGA. Justin Rose obviously was playing exceptionally well. I said, do you see something there? And the other question I asked him, are players changing balls again? Because Titleist seems to be close, the X and the Pro V. So are they changing balls course dependent? Like if the greens are firmer one week, are they going to a spinnier ball versus the other ball? And he said no, because the trajectory and everything changes so much that they see their window and they want to hit it. So that made sense. But I didn't understand why. I mean, I had my theory on why the guys were going to a spinnier ball, because it seems like all the clubs now are made to take spin off. And that extra spin gave them more control, especially when you're going to a place like Augusta, where precision with your irons is a key feature. I mean, Scott Fawcett would argue it's a key feature anywhere, which I don't think anyone's really going to argue on that one. That's just common sense now. But even in those places where you're looking for better control, I think that they had gone to the higher ball, a little more spin for the control. And I guess my question is, have you seen something similar as the years played on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a lot of different areas there. Like the Tiger Woods quote that I am aware of is, he's like, I have no problem taking speed off. And so he gravitated towards some really high spin ball, because if he needed the spin, he would have it with the ball. But then if he needed to play a controlled shot, he felt comfortable taking off some speed, take off some spin. And he could take off spin, but it was hard for him to like add spin through technique. So I think that could explain some of it. We've definitely seen the most recent generation of, as we're testing through the years, we've seen kind of what you said, the Pro V1 and Pro V Next get more similar in spin rates, and also a little bit lower in spin rates from what we've seen. So that would maybe make sense that the Pro V1X is no longer a very, very high spin option. It's more of a medium high spin option. So it's not as extreme as maybe the previous couple generations. And so that's also been very interesting to track as we go year to year to year from different balls. I think there were way more extremes of performance. There were some balls that 7-iron spun kind of 1,000 RPM less than the typical ball, and some that spun 1,000 RPM more. And I feel like that window's tightened a little bit more as kind of people are honing in on what a good performance is across the board. And so it probably makes switching between those balls a little bit easier because you're kind of dealing with some more and more minor nuances, and then getting the aerodynamic profile in the window that you want. But yeah, I think that's one of the more fun things to track from the ball dynamic side. Is just, and it's unfortunate that I guess consumer without ball dynamic won't be able to know that their ball went from maybe super low spin to medium spin to slightly high spin. And so we can kind of see those year on year changes pretty clearly with our testing.
Do you guys talk to the My Golf Spy guys at all? Because I know that their ball test is one of the most popular things out there on the internet, and I think they just came out with the teaser on the Kirkland ball, and they were very impressed with how that came back around. But how do you guys not trade info, but do you converse back and forth at all? Just especially since the ball dynamic is gaining so much popularity, or has gained in popularity, and it's a very unique tool. And you guys kind of do similar things.
Yeah, no, I think we had a lot of good back and forth with those guys. They'll come in and visit. We'll give our product presentations. And I know one of the first projects I worked on when I got to Ping as an intern was, I think maybe My Golf Spy wasn't happy that we had access, but the first test that one of the first driver tests they released, they had an easy way to pull in all of their data. So we were able to get shot level data from every single driver they had used, and where the ball flew, and what the carry distance was, what the offline distance was. And so Eric Henriksen was my boss. He's like, hey, maybe you could apply strokes gained to this data set, because they were kind of just looking at distance and fairways hit. And it'd be nice to know, okay, well, I think our hypothesis was that Ping drivers might perform really well at minimizing the big miss hits. Like, we have way more forgiveness than most. Like, we should see less extreme foul balls, but you don't capture that if you only have a fairways hit statistic. You kind of want to have a gradient of, hey, a 20-yard offline shot's not great, but a 40-yard offline shot's pretty bad, and then 60 plus, like you could be bringing in kind of water and out of bounds in some pretty bad scenarios. And so my first project was taking My Golf Spy data and applying strokes gained to it, and then re-rating the drivers they had tested in terms of strokes gained. And that ended up transferring to how we evaluate our drivers in our testing. And so now every club that goes through a player test, either 7-iron, wedge, fairwood, driver, we give it a strokes gain performance. And we say, okay, this club from generation to generation is gaining 0.2 shots per round, or whatever the number is. And I think when My Golf Spy came in and met with us, we were like, hey, this is what we did with your data. You might want to consider applying strokes gain to how you analyze your driver performance. And so I'm pretty sure now they have a strokes gain number for a lot of their tests, and a forgiveness number. I think they're working with Lou Stagner and some forgiveness and advanced metrics as well. But so that's been kind of fun to see some of those statistical applications trickle down. And then on the ball testing side, I think we were pretty open with, hey, like, we do a fast driver speed test, a slow driver speed test, 7-iron, wet wedge, dry wedge. And so they've started to incorporate, I think, all those aspects into their testing.
The studies that I've read, that's what they have in there. I recognize that patterning.
Yes, I think they have fast, medium, slow, and then I've seen on their ball testing and wedge testing, they've started to add a wet and dry component to it too. So I think it's been a good product collaboration. And also, because we're trying to work on those areas, our wedges have done very well in their wet wedge testing. So I think it's worked out well for us in their testing areas that we think are really important to perform well in.
Yeah, I've been fairly impressed. And again, I play maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks nowadays. But I was in Sam's in the spring, and their members mark ball was there, and I think it's very similar to Costco. You can get 2 dozen for $29 and change. That's with tax, so it's a pretty good bargain. And I was fully expecting them to be ballooning up because I mean, I don't play much, but I can still swing at about 115, 118 ish. So I was fully expecting the ball to be ballooning, crosswinds for the wind to just grab it, and because we get pretty windy here in the spring, but it didn't. It didn't float. It didn't upshoot. I don't have launch TrackMan or Flight Scope or anything numbers on that. I haven't tested it that far. Just the few times that I play, I just wanted to see how it performed. But it's been quite impressive. And I think, to your point, from what I've seen with golf balls, is the extremes have come closer to the middle, where you might have a click or two higher spin or a click or two lower spin. But I don't think they're getting very much outside of certain parameters. Everything seems to be much closer to a middle now than it used to be many years ago. If that's the case, then that ball seems like it would fall in line with that ideology or that thinking as well.
Yeah, I don't. We actually unfortunately haven't tested that one yet, but the previous couple generations of Kirkland balls we have tested, and I think it kind of fell into what you would categorize.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty high spin, a little floaty from our testing, and that was at the time, like, unfortunately, the ball that be, hey, if you picked up the cheap option, that could cost you 15 yards off the tee. And we prefer if you did do that. But a
You
fun
definitely
one
hear the difference when you drop them. You took a Pro V or a premium ball at TaylorMade or Bridgestone, and you held that in a Kirkland over the last couple of years, and you dropped them on pavement or on tile or floor, wood, whatever it was. You could definitely hear that the Kirkland sounded more like a Super Ball.
Yeah, it is fun. So we do a putter feel characterization. So, like, is it firm, medium, soft? And it is pretty, like, obvious when you're, like, playing with a soft versus a firm ball. You can just click it with your putter a few times, then you drop it on pavement. It's, like, pretty eye-opening how distinctly different those sounds can be.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe the fun one on the budget side of things is we're testing all these balls, and we've been testing max flight balls recently, and they tested really well in our kind of 2025 spring testing. And then we see Ben Griffin winning a couple of times. It's like, that's kind of a bit of validation for us of, like, was this ball actually good? Like, it seems like it's up there with a Titleist ball. And then to see it win a few times on tour, it's like, obviously it's performing well at the very highest parts of the game.
How different do you see in both clubs, because obviously you're at a club company, and then balls because you do ball testing? How different are the balls that the consumer can go buy? We'll take a MaxFly. They go to Dick's and they want to buy the MaxFly Tour X, or they want to buy a MaxFly Tour, or they go into a PGA Superstore and they want the newest ping driver. How different are what their consumers getting off the shelf? Is it different than what the tour pros are getting, outside of certain players needing adjustments for their launch conditions? Has that also come closer to being more similar? Or many, like when I was younger in the 90s, if it came from the tour department, it didn't look, and it, outside of the stamping, it really didn't look like anything that you could get off the shelf, or even if you were in the golf business as an assistant. But it seems like the industry has brought that closer together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think unfortunately I still have heard from other companies that there can be tour versus kind of regular off the shelf versions. But
I think there always will be tour prototypes.
Yeah, yeah. But I think for some companies there is like a tour line and a kind of main production line. But I think one thing that Ping prides itself on is that what a consumer gets is what the tour pro gets. And so we have the same quality controls that we want for the tour players as we do for the regular everyday consumer. And I think there have been some fun examples of a tour player has just gone to like a local PGA Tour superstore and bought a club and like play with it in a tour event. I've heard that happen a few different times. I think the only thing that I'm aware of us doing is like when a player's trying to get like a little bit lower spinning driver head, we will go through 10 driver heads, measure them.
That's a little, like I said, when you're fine tuning,
yeah,
you want to bring spin down by 200 or something like that. That would only make sense, especially when someone's playing for their living as opposed to just bragging rights in their club or in their neighborhood. That would make total sense.
Yeah, and one of the things
I thought so.
Yeah. So we're definitely very proud of that. That our tour option is the same as their consumer options. But one of the things like Marty would argue is that we kind of our fitting philosophy, fitting performance is if we can get the the tools that tour players have to consumers. And so a clear one for the loft one is tour players were kind of dialing in the driver loft they wanted at will. And now we have adjustable hosels where we can go plus or minus a degree and a half of loft and get someone to the perfect loft for their game. And that isn't just a tour only solution. The CG shifter, where people will be putting hot melt in different places on the head, now you can just move the CG shifter at the back of the club and get your 20 yards of left right adjustability there. So that's been a pretty the thing we're always trying to like work towards. How do we get the most advanced solutions to that everyday golfer as well to service them? And I think Dynamic does that as well. I think a lot of our fitting tools are kind of giving some high level fitting and gapping solutions.
What has been one of the most eye opening things that you've seen, or that has blown you away? Either you thought you were sure on something, yet your time at Ping has completely changed your perspective, and that has blown you away, or that there was something else that you guys had been working on, and either you or the team thought it was going to go one way and it came out completely different in a good way, and then really learned something. So it's something that, and it can be more than one thing, something that has really blown you away that you never thought was going to happen and yet did.
Yeah, two things that came to mind quickly. One was kind of a Marty challenge for myself. He was trying to think, like, one of the things that tour players can do when they're trying to figure out the gapping for their bag is they can try out a 4-iron or a 4 IDI that we just released, or a 7 wood, and basically perfectly construct their bag, get their 230 club, their 250 club, their 270 club, and get all those things perfectly dialed for a course, for weather conditions. If they're going to play the Open Championship in a couple weeks, how do they get that low flying kind of long iron options? And so Mars, like, how do I provide that solution to the everyday golfer? And the first thought was, okay, maybe we can do hardware tools where we can put more hybrids out in the field, put more IDI driving iron options out in the field, put more fairwoods out in the field. But there's a bunch of issues with that. One, it's a big cost, and have all those hardware tools out in the field is difficult to pull off. And the other one, I think the more practical one, is that it's pretty hard on your endurance as a kind of average golfer to be able to hit 5 shots with one club, 5 shots with another club. If you try to do a full bag fitting in a single day, like, you could be hitting 5 shots with all your 13 clubs, and easily you're hitting over 100 shots, and you're tired, and your shot with your 5 shots with one club to start off with is way different than your energy at the end of at 2 hours later. And so Marty's challenge to me was like, hey, could we, using someone's 7-iron, which everyone pretty much always does in a fitting, can we predict the rest of their clubs? Can we predict how their 8-iron, 9-iron, 6-iron, 5-iron, 4-iron will perform? And I think I heard this challenge, I think it was around COVID time. I was like, I don't think it's possible. Like, that seems pretty hard to go from a 33-degree lofted 7-iron to a 60-degree, or the opposite direction, to get down to a 15-degree 3-wood and predict that correctly. You're moving 20 degrees of loft in either direction. And kind of spent a little more time on it. I was always like, let's give the Marty ideas a chance. There are always usually a lot of good nuggets in there. And so we looked at one thing we have done for basically every iron that we've ever released is do a gap test. And so we'll have players at our Ping Proving Grounds range go through, if we're releasing a club that has 4-iron through pitching wedge, they will hit 3 shots or 5 shots with every single one of those clubs. And those are some of the worst tests to try to do when it's 110 out. You're very exhausted and hot and sweaty after 45 minutes of doing that. But the data gathered is super valuable. And so I was able to look at those tests. We've probably have like 100,000 shots that have been hit with that protocol. And then we got some really good, clear trends when someone moves from a 7-iron to a 6-iron. They gain 5 miles an hour ball speed, and their launch goes down by 2 degrees, and their spin goes down by 1,000 RPM. And you can start to build up those trade-offs together. And now we're pretty confident that we can predict in someone's entire iron set based solely on their 7-iron numbers. And then we were like, how can we layer on top of that? Like, kind of the original goal was, can we predict your hybrids and fairwoods? And so to support that, we now call it the gapping app to help gap your clubs. We've done testing of, we'll have, when we release a new hybrid line or fairwood line, we'll do a gap test where we have someone hit a 7 wood, a 4 hybrid, and a 4-iron. and see how those perform. Do the same thing with the IDIs that just came out. We did a listen. We would do an IDI versus 4-iron versus 4 hybrid test. And so now we've built out that database, and basically anyone now can come in, give us your 7-iron numbers, and predict out your entire set from 3-wood through lob wedge, and tell you what we recommend for what hybrid you should choose, what fairwood we should choose, and kind of what IDI or different kind of bridge clubs you want to use. So I think that was one of the more like kind of going in. I didn't think it was possible for us to do a full gapping off a single club, and it's been one of the more powerful tools we have to be able to provide that to our fitters and to our consumers.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and it ties into all sorts of ball flight and all sorts of engineering things. We now try to have our designers, when they're kind of going through design guidelines for long irons versus hybrids versus fairwoods, we want those to be really good options. And so we want the fairwood to fly the highest, we want the hybrid to kind of sit in the middle, and the long irons to be the lowest flying option, so that people have good options for each club.
How do you balance player feedback, whether it's just through the fitters who are out there with the general public, or you guys when you're working with some of the best players in the world, and the physics / applied physics? So especially with AI, and that's with AI gaining such traction more and more, like exponentially every day. And I had Ishmael Ben Hayoun on. I don't know if you work with Ishmael at all. He works for Altair, works with all the major manufacturers on their AI, his division's AI and he said that the normal concept to market approach of golf clubs forever was roughly 18 months. And he said he'd be able to cut it down to roughly 4 to 6 through the AI modeling. But with all the design, like the engineers, especially the older they are, that engineering, physics is not going to really change. When you have someone that says, here's a design that's going to work, but then you get feedback from the players, again, of all different levels, how do you marriage the two to come up with a product that's going to work?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think we're trying to figure out the best ways possible to leverage AI. There's some kind of obvious, you can improve your email marketing. That could be expedited by 10x. I think it takes a little more thought as to how to innovate. Innovate's not maybe the most obvious thing for AI to do. It's pretty good at reading tons of training data and kind of extrapolating what makes sense next, but it's not always maybe geared towards kind of an entirely novel concept. But it's something we're actively looking at. How do we make ping as an organization more efficient with all the tools that are kind of exploding in the past couple of years? So that's definitely an ongoing one. And I think the other portion is how do you incorporate feedback? And I think a lot of the time, I'd say my approach and probably Mari's approach is there's usually like good insight to be gained from hearing what someone's feedback is on a product. And a lot of our time is software tools for us. Like they aren't able to do what they want with the tool. Maybe they aren't able to do what they want with the club. And it's not always like what the consumer then asks for as the solution isn't always the right pathway to go down. But usually the pain point they have kind of indicates where you should look for the next innovation. So you might not jump to do exactly what the customer wants, but you can learn a lot from their feedback. And I was going to bring this up for maybe the surprising one, but I think it kind of ties in nicely here. I think Marty has had many times had I think Tony Finau actually had this a few times at the Masters where he didn't like hitting some of our fairway woods off the tee. And kind of this feeling that he might like pop it up. I think Marty had the same feeling of like, hey, if you tee up a fairway wood, the head's kind of small. We've done a lot to optimize hitting a fairway wood off the ground, get that profile as low to the ground as possible, launch as high as possible. That can be a little bit intimidating looking down a small head, trying to hit it off a tee. Feels like there's a little bit less room for forgiveness, kind of both hitting a little bit high in the face or low in the face. And you think at a certain point, like there isn't a way to break trade-offs in a big way in the driver or fairway technology space. It's like we've been working for the past, I don't know how many generations of moving CG low and back and maximizing MOI. Like you think it'd be hard to make a big 5-yard leap forward in performance now. And one of the recent ones that I think Marty was a big proponent of was a thriver solution. I'm not sure what our official term is yet, but we basically been putting a 12-degree max driver head onto a 3-wood or a 5-wood or 7-wood shaft, and you can get a 3-wood performance off the tee with a driver head. And it's like we've just unlocked a massive jump in performance. So we did a player test of hitting a 3-wood off a tee versus hitting this kind of 3-wood driver combo off a tee, and it was like I think we hit, I forget exact numbers, but it's like 10% more fairways. Your pure MOI in the club is like double or triple, and you just have this quantum leap forward. And if someone wants a 3-wood as their kind of secondary tee option, they hit it really far where they're not going to be hitting off the ground very often to par fives. Like having this 12 max driver solution just unlocks a 2x jump in forgiveness and a massive decrease in your downline dispersion. So it is kind of possible if you kind of turn off all your conventions of how a 3-wood should look and just say, what would get you your max forgiveness? Let's put a driver head on a 3-wood shaft, or let's put a driver wood on a 7-wood shaft, and all of a sudden you have a massive jump of performance that I would not have thought was possible after working at things for 8 years.
That seems that fairway would seem to be a dichotomy, especially at the higher levels. That as you mentioned, that there's a difference between hitting off the fairway and hitting off the tee. So it's like, what does the course require? That's basically the simplest solution in my own head that I came up with when I was playing, because it was like some courses you need that club at that time that went 280, because if it was the dog leg and you're going to drive it through the fairway, or you have to cut the driver. Obviously you overcut it, and there's a lot of different things. So you always had the 3-wood was a strong 13, 14 degree 3-wood, and it was like a backup driver. But then you had the big gap to your 3 or 4 iron. Hybrids were really not what they are today quite yet when I was playing. But then if you had a course where you needed to go into a par 5 and 2, it better be open in the front of the green, because you were not getting the ball up in the air very high. So then if you used your other fairway wood, that was great for going into par 5s off the deck. But if you wanted off the tee, you were usually hitting it too high. And if you get any holes into the wind, it's like, it's just way too far back. So it seems to be that the fairway woods is still has, for better players, there's still that issue that seems to need a solution. But in hearing you speak, that even Tony now and obviously Marty's a great player himself are still sometimes having that conundrum. It's like, well, what do I put in play based off, like if you have a hole or two that you need that long tee shot but short of a driver, and then you have a couple of par 5s that you got to go into and bring it in high, now you're really in a pickle.
Yeah.
It's like, which one am I going to sacrifice?
Yeah, I think the really good analysis that underpinned kind of the decision to even consider this option was we have over 100 million shots that have been collected with Arcos data. And so we can see a lot of different things off of that. We can see how well your iron set's gapped, but one of the ones we looked at was how often do people use their 3-wood off the tee versus off the fairway. And there was a really clear trend based on driver distance. And I think this makes sense if you think about it. If you hit a driver 300 yards or longer, it's very rare they're going to be using a fairway wood or 3-wood off the ground. Most of the time it will be your scenario we talked about, where it's a dog leg, you got to only hit 280. And so the number we got was 80% for guys that hit over 300 yards, 80% of the time they'll be using 3-wood off the tee, and 20% would be off the fairway. And so in that case, it's like you might as well optimize that 3-wood for off the tee performance. And the 1 out of 5 times that you're hitting out of the fairway, it won't be ideal. You might have to chase it up, but you can make it work for the 4 out of 5 that's working really, really well. And on the flip side, I think if you hit your driver like 200, it was 80-20 in the opposite direction. So 80% of the time you're hitting it off the ground, 20% of the time you're hitting off the tee. In that case, it's like, let's use our max and other super low face height fairwood options that are really easy to hit off the ground, and you get maximum distance in that scenario. And so it's kind of a blend based off of how far you hit it and what you're looking for. Course specific obviously matters a ton. You can still be a guy playing a 600-yard par 5, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to need a 3-wood.
I'm going to need all the firepower I can pack into there.
So I think that's where a lot of like the more nuanced decisions are going, is how do you tailor your your clubs and your ball for a specific course that you're playing. Um, a big one that kind of Marty, it feels like a joke, but in a lot of his section events, there's been no one ball rule. And so he can
Mm.
go and on a downwind hole, he can go and play a spinny or higher flying ball that will go forever downwind, and it'll have stopping power into the green downwind because it has some more spin. And into the wind, he's like, oh, let's play a lower flying ball that will penetrate the wind, fly straighter, and he'll gain 10, 15 yards on the field because he's playing a ball that's optimized into the wind. And then on par threes, the reason why it's getting up to 5 balls is par threes is he can have no in between clubs. He can play a ball that like flies 5 yards shorter and can hit an iron shot full, or 5 yards further and also hit an iron shot full. So I think he played up to 5 balls in one event and won the event.
So he got his back pockets is bulging with balls. He gets on a tee. He's got to figure out which one he's going to use. Hard enough picking which of the 14 clubs you're going to hit. Now he's got to pick one of 5 balls.
He would start on the hole and be like, "Hey, this is my Pro V1X hole. All right, this is my Tour BX hole. All right." Playing partners wasn't pretty mad up to the third hole.
It's like ball. Anybody's spouse, their wife or their girlfriend, and I only say this because women usually, sometimes it's men as well, usually have a closet full of shoes, but none of them they can wear out for dinner that night. It's like you have so many choices that you can't make up your mind, and you need to go get another one. It's like
Marty's got a closet full of balls, and he uses every single one of them on every single round.
What one of the things that I used to hear a lot, and I'm sure you do as well, especially since you're in it on a daily basis, is the higher handicaps, or people say that, well, I'm not good enough to get fit, either for my golf clubs or my golf ball. And some of the you get down to low single digits. Someone will say, oh, I played hockey in college, or I was a good athlete my whole life, et cetera, et cetera. Fitting's not really going to help me. And what I found out was usually people who would say those things, either one, weren't ever introduced to what a good fitting was, and the second one was, along that same line, they went through a bad fitting somewhere during the course of their playing the game. So, but do you, I'm assuming you still see the same or hear the same. And what would you tell the people out there who are listening to this that are contemplating fitting and think that they've always held to that mantra of, well, I really don't need to get fit because it's only for better players, or I'm not good enough, or I've got to the level I can get to, and my athleticism is good enough. What would be your message or response to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, usually you have the most to gain if you haven't ever been through a fitting and you're playing hand-me-down clubs or whatever you bought off the rack. There's usually, like, PGA Tour level, like, you're making kind of micro tweaks, and players are sensitive to it, but you're going kind of 1 yard here and there and maybe changing your peak height by 5-10 feet in one direction or the other. But for someone who's never got fit for clubs, it's like we can finally find the right shaft. You could be off by 2 shaft flexes and not know it. You can be playing an R flex and you have some speed, and you need to be playing X flex, and that alone can gain you 20 yards off a driver. And it's like, if you do that for your entire bag, like you legitimately could drop. You have way more to gain. You could drop 5-10 shots from a really well done fitting. So I think in my mind, it's like I view it as like the tour pros have less to gain, but they're way more sensitive to it, and so it matters to them because they're kind of dealing with 5-10 yard windows that they can pick up on the nuance. And maybe the worst players, they're not going to be able to tell the difference between Pro V1 and Pro V1X. Like, that might be a little bit too nuanced for them, but they might be playing a ball that goes 10-15 yards shorter and not know it, and just getting in the ballpark would make a massive difference to them. And so they have massive amounts to gain in the macro scale, where they can gain 15-20 yards and not be aware of it, and that can really add up over the course of your entire bag. And I think there's probably another, maybe even further extreme, where if you're super new to the game, it might be a little intimidating to go to a fitting process. You might not actually make solid contact enough at a time, or it might be hard to be like, okay, this is the perfect loft for you, and you're just not entirely sure what to do in fitting. And that's where I think a lot of our WebFit online tools are super powerful, and you can get kind of your basic information, answer some course condition questions, answer some general things that you want to see out of your golf clubs, and we get you a really good jump start from a virtual fitting experience. So we're trying to cover kind of that whole broad spectrum of fitting options, kind of the tour player elite view, and then all the way to the novice golfer who kind of just wants to get into get into golf and get to a really good starting point.
Yeah, I used to tell people that if you went for a pair of shoes and you were a size 10, you wouldn't wear an 11. You wouldn't even wear a 10 and a half. Now, could you run a marathon or could you do your daily walk, 10,000 steps in that? Of course you could, but you're going to stumble with a pair of shoes that's usually too big or too small or too big. And if they're too small, your feet are going to start bothering you after a couple of days, depending on how small you go. So why wouldn't you want to get fit just to maximize what your skill level is at this time? And of course, if it changes, you can update it from there. But they would, you could see the wheels starting to turn in their own head when you relate it to something they do on a more regular basis. And to your point, especially in the balls, they can pick up 10, 15, 20 yards. I mean, that's like someone shines a massive light on, and then it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And now you do, now we introduce you to this. So do you sometimes have to take it in steps like that, where maybe you see somebody's data and you're like, okay, they're given some friction or some kickback. Here's the most glaring option that's going to make their eyes really open up, that we can get them this. And then do you go with that and then just let them marinate on that for a while, and then say, would you like to go through the fitting your driver or fitting your irons or your wedges or hybrids and the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean that sounds like I like the shoe analogy. It seems like a really good approach. One of the fun things that we have with our Copilot fitting software is we have people who've gone through different portions of our fitting process, and so we have data on people who bring in their gamer driver and then try out the latest ping driver, and they put in what's the distance with their gamer, what's their offline dispersion with their gamer, and then what happens when they get fit into a G440 driver in terms of distance and accuracy. And so we have this now 1,000+ sample of what happened to a person before and after a driver fitting. And that's a really fun one where we can say, hey, like on average, we're seeing a 5-yard gain in distance and a 20% reduction in dispersion. And that's translating to two shots per round off your driver alone. And so I think we're trying to make some of these tools become really empowering to the fitter and to the consumer, to say, hey, like, you might not think 5 yards is that much, or you might not think a 10-20% reduction in dispersion is that much. Maybe it's not worth a new driver to you. But if you translate it to strokes gained and to performance over the course of the round, say, hey, that could save you 2 shots per round. That's a driver alone. That can become pretty powerful, pretty nice, like storytelling to get someone across the line.
Yeah, and it's not so much you're not trying to sell somebody on something. You're actually, they come to you for your help and your expertise, and you're trying to help them. And you have all these mountains of data, and you have all this information. As you said, 100 million shots in heart coach. You're like, yeah, we're pretty good at this. At least we think so. We got a lot of reasons to believe that we're pretty good at this. Like, I'm going to give you things that are going to help your game. Why would I try to sell you or pitch you on something when I don't? Number one, I don't have to, and number two, we have all of these things to back this up that we've gathered to make you better. That's why you came to us in the first place.
Yeah,
so the people out there say, well, they're just trying to sell X balls, or they're just trying to sell their wedges or their newest drives. Like, no, there's reasons. And if your local fitter for ping, wherever you go with, thinks that something is going to benefit you compared to what you had and the data that they have on you, and they let you know that, at least give it a try. Don't be so stubborn to not take advantage of the advances in technology that there are today. Like, Andrew Rice said it great when you're at Coach Camp, where he was giving a story of somebody who was giving a hard time about, it was either he was talking about something, I think he had just gotten back from visiting you guys, or it was with the TrackMan or something about technology. And Andrew asked them, did you, when you got here today, did you come here in a horse and carriage? Did you drive here in a car? And they said, that I came in a car. What kind of crazy questions? They said, why didn't you come in a horse and carriage? Because a car would be considered advanced technology compared to somebody, 80, 90 years ago. So you've obviously gravitated towards the use of technology. So why are you so anti when it comes to your golf game? And I thought that was a brilliant way to explain it to somebody.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think what we're trying to be is as objective as possible. Like, we're not trying to smoke and mirror you into, you need to do this, but try to provide, here's concrete data on how much better everything you're going to get. For the guy who's gaining 1.5 shots per round driving, they can say maybe it's not worth it to them to invest in a new driver. I think similar on the ball perspective, like when you go Ballinamic, we will show you versus your current ball, hey, maybe you only gain 2.5 yards on a driver and it spins a little more on the green, does this and this on your kind of irons and wedges. And you can decide whether or not it's worth it to try that ball, to invest your money in it. But try to, just the act of giving someone the data and kind of empowering them to make as educated decisions as possible, we think will help us in the long run. If we can educate you on what it takes to play better golf, we think that'll help you play better golf.
Dan, it's just is it still $40 to do the you can get three
yes.
recommendations?
Yeah, we've tried to make it a little bit more easy to get in, so we've now added 3 different tiers. So if you want to just dabble in and get a single fitting, it's $15, and I think it's $29 for 3 fittings and $40 for 5 fittings.
Oh, jeez. Come on, for $40. What golfers spend on equipment that never works? I mean, it's fun just to see the differences. And I think I've done it 2 or 3 times. And just to go through it and having the fun and the excitement to go get a couple sleeves or even a couple dozen of the balls of the recommendations that you guys give. It's fun to go out there and just see what the results are going to be for you as an individual. Myself, I had always had issues. My driver spin, we could never get the spin down. Now, this is, again, my era was 20 years ago. I stopped playing competitively. But the drivers were not low spin like they are today. And then my irons were always high launch, low spin. So my irons were always great. But I was always stuck between, if I got a harder ball off the tee, then I would sacrifice spin around the greens. I was never a high spinner, ever. So for me, it was stuck in between the two. And I always went with the softer ball, for not because of the same reasons as Tiger, but just knowing that I rarely ever hit a wedge full. So if like, okay, I could bring the spin down if I needed on a wedge, so I'll go with the higher. And I was plenty long, so giving up 10 yards or so on a driver wasn't going to make that big a difference for my game. But it is very fun to go out there and hit these different shots with these different balls and just see. And then for anyone out there listening, if you have input that maybe what you experienced didn't match, I'm sure you guys have an email that people can send their input to. And it's people who gather information more than most. It's always fun to have some extra, even if they might not know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I'm the support email for Ballnamics. So if you send to support at ballfink.com, I will get it and respond, which is maybe not the best thing to advertise. But I see everything comes in, and I think it is pretty empowering. Like if you are a person who needs lower spin on your driver and wants still maximum spin around the green, like we have seen balls that kind of can fit every area of the game that you want pretty well. That's kind of our match percentage that we give you at the end. Like this matches your requirement for drivers, matches what you want for irons, matches what you want for wedges, 95% of the way there. And so that's why, like, I know there's some philosophies, hey, you should start fitting your golf ball around the green. But if you did that in your case, it's like you might find a really high spinning ball around the green, but then you get to the driver and it's not doing what you want. You're getting high spin on top of high spin. And so the power of Ballnamics is you can have extreme preferences. It's actually really good if you do have extreme preferences. Like if you want a ball that flies really well into the wind on a driver and spins a ton around the green, it has any type of spin you want on irons, like we can find a ball that does pretty well at everything together. And it's pretty remarkable that these things aren't as linked as we thought. Like a ball that spins high on a driver doesn't necessarily spin high on irons. A ball that spins low on a driver doesn't necessarily spin low on irons. And so you can kind of piece together, hey, I want low on driver, high on irons, high on wedges, and find that optimal ball for your game.
That's amazing that you guys can do that stuff and dial in somebody so accurately. No wonder scores are some of these course record, like the Rocket Mortgage. The course record was broken twice in the morning round, and then again in the afternoon, and a third time the next day. It's amazing that what can be done in today's world.
Yeah,
and you guys contribute a big part of that.
And I think it's fun to see like how the different ball manufacturers, like they know exactly what they're doing. So we have access to some of like the tour only Titleist balls, and so they have a right star and a left dot. Like Marty plays the left dot, and it's okay. If I was a ball company, what I want to do, I probably want to have a pretty high spin option, a pretty medium spin option, a pretty low spin option. But it'd be nice if I had a high spin option that flew low, or if I had a low spin option that flew a little higher. And so like the Pro V1X is maybe a little bit of a higher spin option across the board. Pro V1's a little bit more middle ground, maybe a little bit lower spin across the board. But Tour Pros might want a super high spin option that flies aerodynamically low, and that's the right star. And so when we test the right star, it's like, man, that thing is crazy high spin off an iron. But then we looked at its height on a driver. It was still high spin, but it flew lower than Pro V1. Well, this is the craziest ball I've ever seen. And it's like, well, Titleist knew what they were doing. They wanted to have the high spin ball that flew really low on a driver. And so you can see these different trends that ball manufacturers are trying to unlock across the board by playing with aerodynamics, playing with ball firmness, playing with spin rates. And so that's kind of we're able to see behind the scenes of what a manufacturer's trying to do. It's been fun to watch.
I did have a question that someone had submitted online when I posted You're Coming Soon, and had to deal with wedges. And I wanted to touch on this, especially since we haven't really touched on wedges. But more accurate, square or open on chipping and pitching. Have you guys found anything where there's a disparity in the ability to be more accurate, whether the face is open or the face is square to the target line, at least at setup?
Yeah, I think I saw that question come in. I was like, man, that is a very good question. And I was like, I don't instantly have an answer for you. We've started to do a whole lot more wedge testing recently. And so we did a company-wide test where we had people hit 60 yarders, 30 yarders, 15 yarders, and measure technique kind of asks them to hit a medium height option. And so I think my first thought when I saw that question was you're unlocking different shot characteristics if you go square face versus open face. Like there might not necessarily one is better than the other, one's more consistent than the other, but square face probably will allow you to hit more consistent lower ball flight. Open face helps you a little bit more with that higher, softer, spinnier shot. I think the big thing that we saw doing different skill levels on those different pitch shots was low point control seemed to be the number one thing that separated out the low handicaps versus high handicaps. So one thing that Joe Mayo clued in on pretty closely was he's been a big advocate of you can't go steep enough. 10 down is a great place to live. And we saw that on average when people made contact with the ground across the board, their average angle of attack on those pitch shots was around 8 to 10 down. And so I was like, oh, that seems pretty well in line with what Joe Mayo was preaching for. But we've now we need to look at angle attack with a few different metrics after doing all this research. Was we need to have angle attack when we make contact with the ground and angle contact when we make contact with the ball. And so if you hit the ground 2 inches before the ball, you're actually going to bounce up into the ball at impact. And so you can have a 10 down angle attack at ground contact and then a positive angle attack by the time you hit the ball, and you might thin it, which is probably not a great shot. But what we saw is that the low handicaps made contact very close to the ball. So their average angle of attack at ground contact was 10 down. They would hit the ball was 9 down. So just the fraction before the ball made really solid contact. The high handicaps had a whole range of like 4 inches fat to 1 inch spin. And their average angle attack when they made contact with the ball was around 4 down. And so they had a 6-degree difference between first contact with the ground and when they made contact with the ball. And so like there's probably a bunch of different takeaways from that, but I think my takeaway is low point control. They couldn't control if they made contact 4 inches before the ball or an inch after the ball. And so their angle of attack when they made contact with the ball was all over the place. And that means they're going to have wild differences in contact quality, wild differences in spin rate, be much harder to control versus the high skill golfers who are consistently 10 down and controlling the low point, making really good contact.
That's very interesting. I followed a new guy on Instagram last night, and I cannot remember his name. He had a very interesting post that this is very rare for a lot of coaches to all comment, wow, that's a really good post. That got me thinking. I mean, how often does that ever happen in the golfing world? But is it like TJ Golf Machine or something like that? But he was speaking, he was illustrating the differences between, as you just said, where a golfer hits the ball and where they hit the ground. And then he correlated that to how much shin or hip movement they had in the swing. And he was using different examples of pros. I think Xander was one. Minwoo Lee was another one. Justin Rose might have been in there. But it all, different types of swings, all world-class players, all hit the ground, all played different shots, one cut, one draw, one this, one that, etc. It was very interesting. So I, of course, had to like it. And God, I wish I could give the guy some props. I cannot remember his name. It'd take me forever to pull it up and find it, or I'd be happy to say his name on here on the show. But yeah, to your point, that the same thing. And with the, I thought it was genius when Ping brought in Joe, James, and Derek, all to do work with wedges, and I'm anxiously awaiting to see what some of, if any of that work's going to get published, or if it's just going to be each of them individually on their social media sites pushing that out. But if you guys do publish it, I'm going to be one of the first in lines to get that paper or book or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an open area of research for us for a while. I think we're probably to the uh, opposite of delight to the our A&T manager hates the fact that we're about to try to do a bunker testing suite of tests. So we're going to bring stand into focal and try to hit some shots and see what we capture from a biomechanics and from club delivery perspective. So it's kind of a lot more to explore on the wedge side of things. What combination of grinds and bounces performs well.
What
I
is
think the
some?
kind of other one.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think it's the kind of similar one that you were tying on to there is like what are different biomechanical ways to get more consistent or to work well on both chipping and full swing techniques. So I think that's an open area of research for us to start understanding a little bit more. It's a little more removed away from the golf swing, so it might not be our main focus, but understand that connection between using the ground, biomechanics, and good club delivery is a fun area to explore.
Always something to explore in there.
Yeah,
It never ends. What is something that you wish you knew before you got into fitting? Like if you could rewind the clock back 8 years ago when you first day you walked onto the Ping campus, and you wish you had something that you knew then that you know now, what would that be?
It's a great question. I think for sure I had no idea kind of the power of TrackMan and all the different metrics it could record. I feel like I have a far better understanding of ball flight and what wind's doing. And if I could have taught my, I don't know, 15-year-old self, I probably could have helped him become a better golfer, because I definitely saw people, good players, I saw him take a big divot. I was like, oh, okay, I gotta work on taking a big divot after the ball, and probably didn't realize that was a very like speed related thing. So I was working on the wrong thing because I just saw someone that was doing something that looked good. And so now I feel like I have a much better understanding of what it takes to hit good golf shots. And so there's a whole kind of I think you might think that, oh, it's overwhelming to know all the physics of ball flight and what causes what to happen. But I think it's more, you can read more piece of the golf shots you hit, because you understand what could be driving it. And it's a little bit less of a black box unknown of, oh, how'd that shot happen. You can actually like diagnose what is going well or going poorly in your game much easier. So that's more, I guess it's more on a playing side of things. But I think the more as a fitter you get comfortable with some of these kind of advanced, don't shy away from the more advanced metrics, but embrace them, understand what they're telling you. It helps your fitting get way more efficient. I think that's what we're trying to do with our Copilot fitting suite of tools. Is not make it complicated, but how efficiently, how fast can you get someone into a club that performs really, really well for them.
Very cool. You guys are obviously doing a very good job of that. You got a few minutes? We could do emergency 9 and just 9 rapid questions. They're supposed to be rapid, and then we'll finish
Sure.
up for the day. Kept you long enough, I'm sure. I don't need Eric, Marty, or Paul messaging me and say you kept Chris too long. We got stuff to do, and you're sitting there just yapping away. First and last one, or everybody gets the same. 180 episodes, just about have gotten those in. And we mix and match the ones in between. So just try to keep it light and fun here at the end. So the first one is if you had a walk-up song to the first tee, let's say it's a member guest. I used to say it's a Ryder Cup, but we'll just say member guest, and you want to get the crowd pumped up. What song are you going to have them cranking over the speakers?
Well, we did have to pick a walk-up song for our ping putting competition. And so one of the guys in our group was in the finals. So I thought through this with him at one point. I think 300 Violin Orchestra gets me going. Big kind of amp yourself up workout song.
What was that again? I got to write this one down.
300 Violin Orchestra.
All right. I'll check that one out. I'm not very familiar with them. My music, if it's not from the 60s or 70s or 80s, it's not up to speed. You're in a violent orchestra. Got it. All right. Always curious to know what you guys are, out at Ping are doing. You're the most used app on your phone.
Ooh, um, it's probably Twitter. Probably just keeping up with the onslaught of news.
All
Maybe
right.
not great from productivity side of things.
Hollywood calls you, said, Chris, we've been following you since you were a kid, and we want to make a movie about your life, and we're going to let you pick the actor that plays you. Who are you going to have him pick?
I had a I watched this movie a couple years ago. It's called The Boys in the Boat, and someone told me I looked like Callum Turner, so I'll go with that.
Okay. Your favorite Ping club of all time? Because I know you guys got the vault and you got all the archives there. I'm very curious to. This is a new one for you guys, so you're the first one to get this one asked. But I'm very curious to hear your answer.
I like it. We had to pick out a 30-day putter, and we kind of had our pick of old legacy putters, and I went with the answer 2 from what Tiger Woods used to win the USAM. And that's used it for a lot of years, and it's probably always near and dear to my heart.
You know, there was not to jump off topic real quick, but there's a new Play It Again Sports that just opened about 2 miles from my house, and I stopped there on the way home last night, and one of my favorite putters of all that I never got to use because they were just expensive when I was a kid, and I didn't have the money to get one, but it was a Ping Pal. That was, for some reason, just the look of that putter, and I probably should have bought that one just because I didn't have one the whole time I was a kid. But that was, and I was thinking of that as I was thinking of questions for the rapid fire to ask you, but seems like most still to this day, with all the great technology you guys have, everything with Ping almost always revolves back to the putter.
Yeah, the very common answer for that is the 1A. People love getting that for their 30-day history and getting the official ping sound.
If we gave you $25,000 and a first class ticket anywhere you wanted to go in the world, where are you going to go?
I would say Ireland. I think I haven't been there for a golf trip, but I feel like it'd be pretty fun to battle through some links golf. That's one on the bucket list for sure.
Okay, very cool. Most people are going someplace warm, but I guess when you already live someplace warm, like you and I, you're trying to go somewhere where it's nice and where it's cooler, especially this time of year. My God,
yeah, summertime would be a nice place to go.
Yeah, we're not even to the halfway point of summer yet, and I'm already like, damn, this is amazingly awful. In your opinion, who has the best swing in golf? Men, women, doesn't matter. Because I'm sure you've seen a lot of their swings.
Yeah. I mean, I think you gotta say that Scotty's doing something right based on his performance. I really like watching Victor. I feel like there's some magic in how low his closure rate is. I think he's just stays so spare for so long. So I feel like one of those two will be. But Victor's kind of who I'm trying to think about when I'm on a swing right now.
It's a good one, very good one. If someone told you, we'll give you 24 hours to get a hole in one, you can hit as many balls as you want, we'll say 110-yard hole, and if you do it, you get $1 million. But if you don't, you can't play golf again. Are you taking it on? Are you taking on that challenge?
Well, I feel like I've seen the European tour videos of that, and it seems like a bad bet. If I could pick some big slopes that funnel it all in, I might consider it. But I think I like playing golf a little too much.
I don't blame you. I don't think I'd do it either. And I've had, I think it's 6 hole-in-ones, but it wouldn't be worth not being able to play again.
I've only had one, so the odds don't seem great for me.
Well, you've got a lot more time to catch up, so I'm sure you'll get there, especially with the dialing in the clubs and the balls like you're able to do. Yeah. Your favorite purchase in the last year under $500 can be anything.
Yeah, I don't know if this is quite what you had in mind, but been to some Suns games with some friends. I feel like going for some experiential purchases has been pretty nice recently.
That's a good one. I mean, there is no right, wrong, and in line. It's just that's kind of that answer there. When most people are saying, "Well, I bought my pellet grill," or "I bought cappuccino machine, or I bought this, but something that's not product that, as you said, is experience related is kind of the idea where that question came from. I wanted to see the wide spectrum of things that people remember that they bought. So it's a perfect answer, to be honest with you. And then the last one, I think I know, because this one has been mostly age demographic related. In your opinion, greatest golfer of all time, who's the GOAT?
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna say anything original, but Tiger Woods for sure.
I would tweak that one, especially when if somebody's like 70 years old, we know who they're going to say. If somebody's under 40, we know who they're going to say. So, but I've had it for so long, I just got to keep that one going just to see the difference.
No, it's a good one.
You have anything that we missed? I mean, we talked quite a bit, and it's hard to believe we blew through an hour and a half already.
No, appreciate having me on. I think if you want to check out some of the products we're working on with Copilot, Ballnamic, WebFit tools, WebFit's probably the whole source suite of WebFit putter, junior, wedge. Kind of always working on things in that arena to help people get fit and play their best golf.
Yes, I will have one-click links, as we always do, to Ballnamic, to WebFit, and My Game Insights. Anything else I need to have in there?
That sounds great.
And of course, one-click link to Ping. All your social media will be in there. People can follow you, look at the cool things you're doing, become a fan, as most of us are. Chris, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been a blast. I'll have to email all you guys and rank who did the best on their episode.
Oh, no.
Just since you're always challenging each other, and then have a challenge who can have the best response to your episode on our podcast.
That might be incentive to get people to come back on. So you might be doing something well there.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Hang out just a minute, everybody else. Thanks for joining us. We will check y'all out next time.